everyone, and welcome to Alto Vita Symposium Day 5. My name is Victoria Savory, and I'm the Marketing Manager here at Alto Vita, joining you from London. It is a great pleasure that I share with you all our agenda for today, which features an all-female panel and an exciting fireside chat with Merilee Karr, CEO and co-founder of UnderTheDoormat and the chair of the UK Term Accommodation Association. The female leadership panel will discuss the rise in alternative accommodation and the importance of duty of care and travel safety in a COVID-19 world, as well as corporate travel transformational technology. At the end of the hour, we will also have a toast with the team to celebrate the end of the symposium, so please be sure to stay tuned and have your champagne glasses at the ready. Please also share your comments and where you're dialing in from within our live chat function so we can answer your questions throughout our live session. So now let's hear from our CEO and co-founder, Vivi, who will be moderating this fantastic panel discussion.
Well, thank you so much, Victoria, for this wonderful introduction. Alternative accommodation, a term encompassing service apartments and unique private homes, are on the rise. And with the demand growing further, we are seeing an even stronger professionalization and acceleration in technology adoption to address quality and consistency, as well as demonstrate a duty of care for corporate travelers. Yesterday, we celebrated Women's Entrepreneurship Day. Today, I'm so delighted to bring a unique combination of female leaders in the field of travel and risk safety, alternative accommodation, and corporate travel. We will touch upon topics around how to attract female talent, female traveler safety, and supplier diversity program. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome the CEO and founder of Maiden Voyage, Caroline Pearson.
Good afternoon, Vivi, and hello, everybody. It's utter pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Hi, Caroline. And our next panelist is the Senior Director, Global Product Strategy Communications of SAP Concur, Amy Paget. Hi there.
Hi, thank you for having us today.
And our last panelist is the COO and President of Guesty, Berit Schwartz.
Hello, Vivi. Greetings from Tel Aviv. Such a pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you so much, ladies, for being here on the final day of Alto Vita Symposium. I'm so grateful and honored to moderate the session. Everyone, please drop your questions, say hello, tell us where you're tuning from. And yeah, ladies, if you could please give a quick introduction of yourself and where in the world that you're dialing from. We know now that Berit is in Tel Aviv. We can start maybe with Caroline and then Amy and then Berit.
Perfect, thank you. So yeah, I'm based in Leeds in the north of England. I founded my company 12 years ago, and I'll tell you more about it as we get in. But just to give you a brief précis, I spent a lot of my career as a business traveller, and I worked for some amazing companies, including EasyJet and KLM. And it was on a lonely business trip that I decided to create Maiden Voyage as I guess, an antidote to those lonely nights that many females spend in hotels by ourselves.
Amy, do you want to go next, please?
Of course, thank you. Hi, everyone. Amy Paget. I work at SAP Concur. I've been here for almost 10 years now. I am based in Richmond, Virginia, so on the East Coast. And I have been in the corporate travel space for, gosh, more than 20 years now. I started my career off in travel payment, corporate payment with UATP and then AirPlus. And then I moved into the TMC world at Carlson Wagenlit Travel. And of course, now I'm here at Concur and exploring technology to make travelers' lives easier.
Well, thank you. Can't wait to hear about it. And what about you, Berit?
So my name is Merilee Schwartz, COO and President of Guesty. Guesty is a software platform for short-term rental property management, really providing everything from connecting to the different channels, managing your operations, automations, and so on and so forth. Really an end-to-end solution for property management. And as I mentioned, I'm here in Tel Aviv.
Thank you so much, Farrell, and thank you, ladies. Shall we start now with our first discussion, duty of care and what it means for the alternative accommodation sector. Carolyn, if I may start with you, as a thought leader in the travel risk and safety, could you share your perspective on duty of care and what it means for female travelers?
Sure. So duty of care is both a moral obligation and it's in many countries, it's also a legal obligation. And it's about if organisations are sending any employee overseas or even on domestic travel, they have to exercise a duty of care to keep those people safe. Now, specifically, of course, there are some issues which face female business travellers, such as legal restrictions or cultural restrictions, and things around maybe pregnancy, breastfeeding, the Zika virus, but also, of course, we've seen many times in stats such as those by the Global Business Travel Association, is that women do have perceived risk and actual risk of sexual harassment and sexual assault. So there are some specific gender-based issues and challenges.
Mm-hmm. So many excellent points. It's really fascinating to know how much thoughts and nuances have been put into this. And Amy, in addition to duty of care, what is expected from corporate travelers and travel managers when it comes to alternative accommodation providers? Can corporate travelers now book alternative accommodations?
Yeah, well, as a result of COVID, a renewed focus on D&I initiatives and sustainability, business traveler expectations for alternative accommodations are, of course, evolving. And the corporate travel manager is adjusting their approach through their travel policies, their online booking tools, and with their TMCs and their suppliers. So expectations for actual accommodations are changing with the times. Mm-hmm. Travelers and travel managers are more deeply considering the safety in the area, the sustainable impact of the property itself. So you asked, can corporate travelers book alternative accommodations? And if so, how? And I think the answer there is that it depends. It depends on the traveler's corporate policy. Many travel managers are opening up the option to book alternative accommodations through their booking tools and their TMCs, and they're ensuring that those options are approved through their policy. If they're allowing for alternative accommodations, they're generally vetted for security and safety in addition to other company and supplier requirements that they might have. Mm-hmm. Now, if a company does not allow for alternative accommodations as part of their policy, and the traveler perhaps books an alternative accommodation for a business trip anyway, it's really imperative for the company to capture that information for duty of care responsibilities and financial reporting. That as just noted, that duty of care responsibility is critically important. SAP Concur does this through our TripLink product. There are a variety of products out there similar to this, but TripLink captures spend that happens outside of the managed travel program. So in other words, we capture bookings that may happen directly with a supplier.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more about individual risk travel measurement, Amy, and that's super fascinating. And I'd love to hear more from the audience, actually, what they think about that. And Barrett, what we've learned from Carolyn and Amy so far, in your opinion, is the short-term rental sector ready to serve corporate clients at a large scale? And if so, can you tell us how the sector is being professionalized? How are they demonstrating this so-called duty of care?
Yeah, so yes, I believe they are prepared for the corporate traveler. We already see that happening. We see more and more adoption of alternative accommodation or short-term rentals by the corporate traveler, especially during COVID-19, and I'd like to address that as well. And you do it through technology, right? Today, technology allows you to automate a lot of processes, to meet legal requirements, to make sure that everything is recorded properly, to save a lot of manpower and time while exercising duty of care. And it provides you the consistency you need for the short-term rental industry, right? It's much more difficult when your apartments are located in many different locations and have different criteria. But automation and technology allows you to really create that consistency across your properties. So that's one thing. Then especially for COVID-19, everybody wants to feel more safe and secure. And with contactless experiences also provided through technology, you can create that experience for your traveler. Make sure that it's a touchless, contactless check-in, check-out process, that you always have the stringent protocols required under COVID-19.
Well, ladies, we're already seeing quite a lot of comments from the audience. Yeah, I think we need to get ready to answer some of these live questions as well. If I may, I think I saw an interesting question for Carolyn. Carolyn, do you see a difference in the consideration of female security needs since COVID-19? Is it still something considering in corporates? Or do they focus less on it because of COVID?
Oh, it's interesting. Hi, Letitia. Good to have you here today. So what we have seen, actually, duty of care, as you quite rightly say, has been all about COVID, because suddenly we're not looking specifically at minority groups. Everybody at this stage is an at-risk traveller. Not specifically females, but what I am seeing is that corporates are maybe taking their eye off the ball from standard duty of care because we are so obsessed with COVID. And of course, what we've seen recently, of course, is the social unrest in the US. We've seen a number of terrorist attacks here in Europe. But also what we mustn't forget is the BEIM community, because we've also seen that there's been an increased risk of impact and infection to members of the BEIM community. So something that I'm really passionate about is that whilst I'll be talking about providing a consistent message to travellers, I also strongly believe that employers should have a personalised approach to duty of care.
And I think we have another question here, probably for Amy. If I'm not mistaken, I saw something from Jack. There is so much talk about risk on Airbnb by corporate travelers. What are your thoughts on this from a risk perspective?
Well, I think Airbnb has taken great lengths to be able to include many of their properties into a managed travel program. As a matter of fact, Concur can actually consume Airbnb properties, and they can be booked alongside GDS properties. And they are what they consider business approved properties. So for example, it's a single person location, no room share, just as an example. And so we're seeing more and more of our customers incorporate Airbnb into their policies and their programs. We also do have direct integration with Airbnb, whereby somebody can book an approved property and it will sync directly back into Concur and give travel managers visibility into those bookings. And let's say, for example, that particular property is not part of the policy, the travel manager can then act on that with the individual. So we are certainly seeing a rise in alternative accommodations appearing in travel programs and policy.
Thank you so much, Amy. I think we've got a great question from Carolina, probably from Barrett. And if you have any thoughts, Carolyn and Amy, please feel free to jump in.
Sure.
What can property managers of private homes do to make accommodations more female-friendly and attract more female corporate travelers?
That's a really good question. So, of course, some of you will know that Maiden Voyage has a certification program for female-friendly hotels, but we did struggle with the alternative accommodation because, as Vered has already said, standards vary massively. The number one thing that correct me if I'm wrong, that is the concern of female travellers is our physical safety. So that risk of assault, sexual harassment. And so what I'm looking for when I'm staying in alternative accommodation is that security. So I want to know that, many females have trodden that path before me, that they've stayed in that accommodation. I want to know that, there's maybe just one access point. I'd like to know what the security is in terms of the building, in terms of the locks on the door, that there aren't easy access points. If it's above ground, again, I'm going to feel a lot more confident than if it's, something that's ground floor with lots lots of windows and lots of access. So that's the key thing. And also having somebody that I can contact, directly if I need to do, if I've got some concerns during my stay. And also, of course, somewhere close to the facilities as well, so that I can either go out and eat, or I can, get some groceries and take them in to where I'm staying.
What are your thoughts, Vered? I think the audience is quite curious to see how you could utilize technology to address a lot of these concerns.
Of course. So it starts with how you describe your property. Again, highlight those security features that you have that would be relevant for women. Also on the marketing front, by the way, we have a beautiful example of a founder and CEO that happens to be a female from White Spider. She really highlighted her care about female issues, allowing photo shoots of women in color in her properties, and taking care of community events within the properties to really highlight why this issue is important to her, and that led to a lot of marketing success for her. Another issue in terms of safety and security is anything around automated messaging. You want your customer to feel that they have someone to turn to at any time, even if they're alone in a cottage. And with our platform, for example, we allow automated messaging, whether it's text, WhatsApp, which is very popular in Europe, email, and Airbnb messaging. Everything is funneled to one platform of messaging, so you can immediately respond to your guests and make them feel that you really care and you're there for them.
Thank you so much, Vered. I'd like to just pick one more question before we dive into our second topic. Maybe if we could touch upon a bit more on TripLink, Amy. Ben has a question. Yes. How can you capture expenses outside of the policy and program? And actually, just one more question from Ben. What is the GDS location, and how are we defining alternative accommodation?
Okay. So I'll tackle TripLink first. TripLink, we capture the bookings in two ways. And so one is email forwarding. So pretty straightforward. You forward your trips to plans at Concur, and it populates in Concur, and the expense line is created. So as a travel manager, you have visibility into the booking, and you have visibility into the cost of the stay. And also you can apply policy to that booking as soon as it comes into the system. So you can log for reports, or you can send automated policy messaging to the traveler. So that's email forwarding, or it's plans at Concur or plans at TripIt. TripIt is a huge component of the TripLink solution. The other way we capture data is through direct supplier integration. So I mentioned the one with Airbnb. We have direct integrations with air suppliers, car, hotel, Airbnb, and even rail. We're developing those integrations now. And so what happens there is that, as an example, I'll log into united.com with my mileage number, which I've connected between Concur and United, and it recognizes me as an employee of SAP Concur. It gives me the option to make a personal booking or a business booking. If I choose the business path, then my SAP corporate rate is applied. And with airlines, if you have a lodged card that your company uses, that can be applied. But that booking, since it's a business booking, will automatically be routed back to Concur. You'll get the expense line, you'll get the e-receipt. So it makes it pretty seamless for the traveler. TripIt Pro is a traveler app that is incredibly useful. And it's got neighborhood safety scores. It gives you on-time alerts about your entire trip. It's everything in one place. And so that's so sticky enough, it inspires travelers to forward their booking to plans at Concur or plans at TripIt. So that's the TripIt piece. When I mentioned GDS, I was referring to the global distribution system. And admittedly, the alternative accommodations, the Airbnb bookings, again, as an example, we don't consume that content into Concur through the global distribution system. We actually have a direct integration with Airbnb to consume that content. Other solutions like HRS and Booking.com and the TMCs have lodging solutions. We bring those in through direct integration, through our API integrations.
Cool. It's really fascinating how advanced the corporate travel sector is. We at Global Mobility have really a lot to learn from. Okay, well, keep the questions coming, guys. We are now going to start talking about our second round of our discussion, female leadership, actually. So if you could start with Barrett, please. What are your thoughts on women representation in startup scene in general? I'd love to hear more about your experience in the mentorship programs that you've participated in, and what are the key takeaways from these programs?
Yeah, so I come, as I mentioned, from Tel Aviv, which is a very large hub for the startup community. We all know that through the years, women were underrepresented in the tech community. It's funny because I believe that in the hospitality community, women comprise of more than 50% of employees, 54 under the last research I saw. In tech, it's usually somewhere around 30%. We take pride in Guesty that we have over 40% women, both in general as well as in the leadership of Guesty. And I think it's a lot about really interviewing without bias and promoting without bias that leads to more diversity in any organization. As an individual, I really try to promote diversity, not only of women, by the way, but also of women. There are several programs. One of them is called Power in Diversity that we have in Israel that is led by 40 different VCs as well as 120 different tech companies that really look into how to diversify the headcount in the different companies. I also take mentorship in the Women's Founders Forum, which takes only women founders and CEOs, and we really try to give them the network and the experience and the knowledge about scaling a business that will allow them to succeed, because as we are a minority in terms of entrepreneurs as well as leaders in tech, we need that assistance, that someone that will give you a hand and give you the experience.
Thank you, Barrett. Well, actually, I saw earlier quite a lot of people commenting about female traveler safety, Carolyn. And what is your opinion, and try to maybe speak to the audience who's currently watching right now. In terms of Maiden Voyage, you founded the organization globally to really support female and LGBTQ plus business travelers. How do you do this? How do you help companies execute this plan and potentially even attract female talent?
Okay, sure. Actually, just to pick up on Vera's point before I move into that, because I prior to launching Maiden Voyage, I headed up tech for all the companies that I worked for, and I got pulled into panel after panel about how we keep more women in tech and how we retain them. And it was always seen as a negative that women were leaving tech. But actually, I thought it was actually empowering for the women, because most of us were leaving to start our own businesses. And the way to keep women in tech, I think, is in intrapreneurship, is about keeping women engaged, because, you know, once you know your job, it can be quite boring. And therefore, to get your teeth into a project, but have the security of a big budget of the corporate to pay you to do something that's exciting and creative is a good way to keep the female talent. But to answer your question on what we do, so on why I left corporate life really, is because you know, I'm absolutely passionate about travel. If you chop me in half, I'm going to have travel written all the way through me. And so whilst I am about travel safety, make no mistake about it, I'm never about telling a woman that you can't travel to this destination because it's unsafe. I'm all about saying, right, you want to go there, how can we do this safely? So in the early days, it was about community and social networking and connecting with other women when you were traveling on business. And today we have an amazing group of ambassadors. So for individual travelers, and I was just speaking to a lady in Malaysia who'd had a horrific incident, is that we can tap into local ambassadors and say, I'm coming to your city. What do I need to know as a female traveller? What's the vibe? What do I need to do to keep safe? But also, what are the really cool things that I can do, which are not just touristy things? Mm-hmm. And then we pivoted this to meet the corporate duty of care. So in a nutshell, the two things that we really do is e-learning programs for organizations. So we've got large clients like oil and gas companies, Silicon Valley tech giants, all kinds of different organizations use our e-learning to educate both managers and female business travellers on how to keep safe when they're travelling. And as you said, Vivi, we've also expanded this to include LGBT, but I'm also excited to say that we're going to be incorporating stuff for disabled travellers and BAME travellers as well. So really encapsulating diverse traveller safety. And in addition to the e-learning, we also come on site. So we have a team of trainers around the world who speak all kinds of different languages. And again, we'll come on site and do workshops, training programs all around gender-based or diverse traveller safety.
Thank you. That's super fascinating. It's just so much nuances in this, isn't it? We've got an interesting question from Ben, which is actually quite tying in with my next question for Amy. Perhaps if we could, I suppose, tackle it together right now. I was wondering, Amy, SAP Concur, or actually SAP, is the largest European software company with over 100,000 employees. So I would like to get a different perspective coming from you, from a large organization. Is there anything being done at the organization? And just going to Ben's question just now, how is diversity handled differently from one region to another? If we could go from Amy to Carolyn in the UK, and then maybe Varen, if you could talk about Europe in general, that would be great.
Yeah, well, so I could probably go on for days about SAP's diversity and inclusion initiatives. D&I initiatives are part of SAP leadership goals. They are driving us forward. We have regular trainings, ongoing seminars, speaker series, and that's at a global level and down to a regional level. There are various networks established within SAP. For example, I'm part of the Global Women's Network. That's a global program. However, we do have those programs regionally, and we have D&I, diversity inclusion ambassadors around the world who lead those regional conversations. I really feel like by ensuring our diversity and inclusion and keeping it always at top of mind here at SAP, we're really supporting the success of our people and our company. And I'm with SAP Concur specifically, we're part of the Business Intelligent Network. Within SAP Concur, like Guesty, we have about 40% women in leadership, which I think is a real accomplishment right now, and points to the work that we're doing in diversity and inclusion.
And can we start our little comparison analysis between regions, starting from you in the US, and then we can move on to Carolyn in the UK? Maybe we could, you know what? Maybe we could jump into the supplier diversity topic as well, if that's okay, Amy.
Yes. Okay. So regional differences in terms of our diversity and inclusion programs. I frankly, there's such a focus worldwide on diversity and inclusion at our company that the regional variances depend upon the ambassadors, I think, and what's happening within that organization. Of course, in the United States, we've had quite a bit of turmoil recently, and so there's been an even greater focus. But as Carolyn suggested, various things are happening around the world that we absolutely have to address. We have to be loud in our voice and make sure we're heard. And in supplier diversity, I think we're also seeing that in program selections. So I mentioned safety, I mentioned duty of care and sustainability, but diversity and inclusion absolutely is a decision factor when creating your supplier program.
And your thoughts, Caroline? Maybe perhaps, as we understand, Maison Voyage has worldwide ambassadors as well. But coming from a UK entrepreneur, it would be great to hear your perspective.
Yeah, so I think where I never fail to be amused is the ignorance sometimes that you see within corporates around seeing the world from their own perspective. And so if you have managers who are sending people overseas, they really don't always get context. So, for example, it may be that somebody, we have an advisor in the company, a black gay man being asked to go to Russia, and not understanding that there may well be some challenges there, or reporting a sexual assault in the Middle East may mean that the lady gets arrested. Or I've even heard a man for a large international bank say that he wouldn't allow a senior female member of staff to travel to the Middle East, which in itself is discrimination, because she may well feel, really comfortable traveling there. But actually, by saying that somebody's not able to go there because of their gender or their personal, dynamics is also a bit ludicrous. And so there's a lot of education that needs to happen, particularly for global organizations, to understand that the world is not always as it is outside of their window.
What are your thoughts, Vera? Do you have any perspective coming from Europe or maybe Israel?
Generally speaking, again, diversity and inclusion has become a very central topic to companies in many countries. Even if there is no law requiring certain diversity measures, at least you need to report it, including in the US, that you need to report your diversity structure, which leads management to think about it more, because it's just uncomfortable to publish that you only have 20% women and 3% Black, right? So I think that's the beginning. It's very difficult to take affirmative action and really force certain levels of the diversity inclusion, but getting the right training in place, which again is done today in many countries, the type of training that will avoid unconscious bias in hiring and promoting, education around diversity, also education around the fact that diverse organizations are more successful on the business level. If you check, the Fortune 500 companies, and you check the success of companies with female board members and without female board members, you will see that the ones with female board members are more successful. So I think that education, both to organizations in general and also to minorities, whether it's women and whether it's other minorities, that they should strive for success, and they have earned their right to be an equal member of those organizations. We start that path.
No, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. Actually, that's sort of also ties into my next question to all the panelists. What are the strategies that you've learned so far that could help the future generation of female leaders achieve, a more prominent role in their organization? As we know, it means something to many organizations, around the world. Amy, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, in terms of development and growth, I think having a coach and or a mentor, or being a mentor, is really helpful, and make that relationship a diverse relationship in itself. That's one really positive way to develop your career and learn from others within the organization. Again, SAP is a huge company and recognizes the importance of this. So we actually do have a tremendous coaching program and mentor program, and they've put some rigor around this. And diversity and inclusion and equity really influences that program.
And what about you, Caroline?
So I think some of the things that really helped me in my career, albeit, I am an extrovert, and so sometimes it's easier to put yourself out there and to volunteer and, maybe to speak at, all hands meetings and things like that. It's something that I mentioned earlier, that I've got quite a low boredom threshold. And so rather than, wasting the time because you know your job inside out and, you could be doing something better, it's actually to volunteer for additional projects. Mm-hmm. So I particularly remember that I was working for ITV. And at the time, there was a project for video on demand with the BBC and with Channel 4. And so I volunteered to work on that project for a few days a week, which allowed me to network with the other broadcasters. But also it meant that I was mentally, still in the game. And then also I think it's important to learn about your industry, not just your company. So if you can talk to the decision makers within your organization about what's happening at an industry level, then you're demonstrating that added value. And then also try and learn the language of the people who are going to further your career. So as a woman in tech, the people who I needed to influence were very often the finance directors, because I would be needing to get business cases through. And I know that an MBA is not for everybody, but actually by going through my MBA, it allowed me to speak the language that he understood. And therefore I could talk to him about return on investment, for example.
That's really super. Thank you so much, Carolyn. Barrett, you already mentioned so many great points just now before Amy started. Do you have any further thoughts on this particular topic, strategies, what you can share for future leaders?
Yes. Sure. So building upon Caroline's last point, I think the number one recommendation I provide to every woman is take risks, right? Get out of your comfort zone. If you're only willing to do what you're 100% best at, which is what I feel a lot of women do, then you will not get ahead. You need to take that role that you're only 50% equipped of managing and know that you'll get by. You need to start your own business, even though you know there are risks involved, but just jump in there and start doing it. And I do think that the current environment, in particular in short-term rentals, by the way, really allows women to become entrepreneurs with less risk, because it's the perfect idea to start your own hospitality business, bootstrap, right? Building on managing properties of others, maybe to begin with, using online platforms to start your business. You don't need funding. You don't need to take a lot of risk. And I see a lot of successful entrepreneurs starting in the hospitality industry.
That is so true. And not only just short-term rental or hospitality industry, what I find is relocation sector accommodates women very well as well. We have some more questions, and I'd like to pick on them if that's okay. Let's start with Joanna Remmel. Amy, wondering if Concur is open to establishing their integration with professional corporate housing providers, like it's been done with Airbnb.
Yeah, so we partner with Airbnb, HRS, Booking.com. Our APIs are open, so you can start off by exploring our API set at, I might have to follow up with you. I think it's developer.concur.com. I can follow up. But you can start there by exploring the technology piece of it. And we also have a dedicated supplier group. And we have somebody solely responsible for lodging, and I can certainly put you in touch with them as well. So is it Johanna? I can follow up.
Thank you so much, Amy. That's really nice of you. I thought I saw a question for Carolyn. Precisely, what is your business model at Maiden Voyage?
Letitia, I'm not sure I understand the question unless you are being very forthright and asking how Maiden Voyage makes money.
I think that's what she's asking.
Yeah, fine. Okay.
The
answer is that we sell training programs and e-learning to large corporates who pay money for that training.
Great. Is there any follow-up questions in addition to what Carolyn has said, Letitia? If so, feel free to just jump in. While we wait for Letitia, maybe if I could ask one last question, ladies. What do you think is an area of growth or opportunity in your respective field? Would like to go first.
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Sure. What is the area for growth or room for tapping into opportunities in the area of your expertise? So yourself, it would be the property management side and short-term rentals for Verit.
Sure, yeah, I can go first.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Amy?
Nope, go ahead, please.
So again, I think even now with COVID-19, there's a lot of opportunity for growth in the short-term rental sector. A lot of people actually prefer short-term rentals to hotels because of the security, because of the fact that you have your own kitchen and you don't have to share an elevator or a lobby with other people. You can really use that to highlight your marketing efforts, to talk about the fact that you have stringent cleaning protocols, to talk about the advantages of working from a spacious area compared to a hotel room, because a lot of people are now starting to work from home, even in different locations, taking a month away or 2 months away in the mountains or the seashore. So if you're close to nature, you can offer a new way of living during this time. So, and of course, appealing to the local community, which is also an opportunity this time. There's not a lot of international travel, but a lot of local travel. And if you tap into that, if you give great opportunities to the audiences that you can locate as new travel personas, you can really be successful even at this difficult time.
Thank you, Verit. And Amy, what are your thoughts on that? Are you experiencing something the same within corporate travel, or do you have any perspective?
Yeah, so Concur is all about tackling employee discretionary spend, and that starts at the booking experience. And as I mentioned at the very beginning, COVID-19, diversity and inclusion, sustainability, these topics are heavily influencing the managed travel program that guides the purchase experience for the traveler. So I see a big opportunity in the booking experience, the payment experience, the on travel, and even in settlement, which we're trying to eliminate the expense report entirely, but at the same time, give travel managers complete visibility. Focusing very specifically on the on-travel experience, I mentioned the TripIt Pro app before. We're doing some really cool stuff there, and we're doing some cool stuff, I think, across all of our solution set. But this is one where we can really, really focus on the traveler and give them that that more personal experience. I think we're all looking to give the traveler a personal, customized experience. And with the TripIt app, you have everything in one space. One thing we're working on to support the diversity and inclusion piece is providing neighborhood safety scores around the world. We're hyper local. The neighborhood safety scores represent risk on a level from 1 to 100. Of course, from the lowest to the highest, and a composite score represents the overall risk for a location. Neighborhood safety scores can be broken down to categories, and these categories are evolving, but we look at overall safety, health and medical, physical harm, basic freedoms, theft, LGBTQ safety, and of course, women's safety, which includes things like verbal harassment, physical assault, violence, it goes on. And so, and of course, individuals now can set their own personal risk level in the tools. So we're making it completely focused on that individual to ensure that their on-trip experience is a safe and healthy one.
Carolyn, any final thoughts to what Amy and Verit have said on this topic? I think we've just got time for that, and then,
Yeah, sure. So actually, I guess just picking up on Amy's point, making sure that a trip is a safe and a healthy one. What we've done, because of the decimation of the travel industry over the last few months, we've got our crystal ball, and we've realised that people are going to want to start travelling again at some point. Certainly, if I've got anything to do with it, and therefore, so we're going to have to travel with the backdrop of COVID-19 for some time. So actually what we developed is a COVID-19 e-learning module, which allows organizations to get the message out to all travelers in a consistent way, whilst catering for the fact that somebody may well have travel anxiety, they may be shielding a loved one, they may be nervous about catching COVID, they may have an underlying health condition, so that we can actually mobilize the business travelers, but also provide handbooks for the organization so that they understand what's appropriate and what's not appropriate, because we're all still learning how to live with a pandemic, and organizations maybe are wondering about asking questions that they've never needed to ask before, and as the vaccine comes out, we're going to have people who are anti-vaccine. So again, it's not just a foregone conclusion that we're all going to be vaccinated. So it's a very complex area, and that's it's been a pleasure to work in that, because again, as you know, I like to have my brain challenged.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much, ladies. We have a lot more insightful questions from the audience, but unfortunately we haven't got the time to do so. I'd welcome everyone to follow up with the panelists directly. And now we have a short fireside chat session with Merilee Karr. She's a wonderful CEO and founder of UnderTheDoormat, as well as chair of the UK Short-Term Accommodation Association. Thank you again, ladies, for this. And yeah, stay tuned. We would like to invite everyone from AltaVita team to finish our week-long symposium with a quick toast at the end of the chat with Merilee. Thank you.
Well, welcome everyone to the fireside chat session of the 2020 AltaVita Symposium Day 5. My name is Vivi Chayadi. I'm the CEO and co-founder of AltaVita. Today, I'm so delighted to be joined by this wonderful lady, Merilee Karr. Merilee is the CEO and founder of UnderTheDoormat and Hosperia. She is also the chair of the UK Short-Term Accommodation Association. In this session, we will hear from Merilee how she's addressing challenges in duty of care, assurance, and quality management in the alternative accommodation sector. Merilee, welcome. And can we start with your
wonderful to be here.
Can we start with your journey from 13 years at Shell to founding such an amazing hospitality startup?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's one of these things. I think from the day I entered Shell, I was always doing entrepreneurial things, from setting up the IT presence in India, probably almost 20 years ago now, that says my age, through to managing the maintenance of the petrol sites around the world, which was property management of a dispersed network of sites, in that case, petrol sites, and now, of course, it's homes. And I decided to leave Shell to set up a business of my own, UnderTheDoormat. And, I think it just brought together all of my passions, travel, property, with all of the experience that I gained in a global corporate role. And I sometimes laugh that I'm a bit of a reverse entrepreneur, because I did the sort of corporate world early, and now I'm an entrepreneur. But, I set up the business, and unlike most entrepreneurs, the larger the business grows, the more that I find myself back into my comfort zone of the things that I was used to doing in the past. So a different journey than some, but actually I think is great, because as we scale the business, I start to, to be able to use some of the skills that I learned back in my Shell days.
That is so wonderful. I love that, reverse entrepreneur. And so, Merilee, with the pandemic, obviously, it's changed dramatically the landscape of the hospitality sector. You being the chair of STAA, UK STAA, what do you think the short-term rental sector can take advantage in terms of opportunity or any imbalance in supply and demand?
Well, I mean, look, I think the COVID pandemic has shook everyone's world. And while, of course, there may be some short-term pain for everyone in hospitality as travel, has, of course, decreased this year. But actually, I think the structural opportunities that are going to come out of COVID are going to put the industry years ahead of where it would otherwise have been, and much faster. So I actually think the opportunities coming out of COVID are the pace of change, the acceleration of change is that much faster. And what you start to see already is changing consumer preferences. So where consumers in the past might have chosen to stay in a hotel because they thought that was the safer option, actually, they're starting to see vacation rentals and short-term accommodation as the safer option because they have their own private space. However, it is also the opportunity that the sector gets known more, not only for being a peer-to-peer sector. If we think about the overall short-term accommodation sector, about 60% of it is peer-to-peer. So that's your Airbnbs, Booking.coms, where an individual owner posts up the property and sells it to another person. But 40% of the sector is professionally managed. And when you're talking about a sector which is projected by PwC to be worth £52 billion in the UK alone by 2025, that's a huge sector in its own right. And actually, I think that's the sector which is poised for the biggest amount of growth. Because consumers who stayed in hotels may feel comfortable to choose a company who manages short-term rentals, who has clear standards, processes, insurance, all the things that give them that reassurance and confidence, more than jumping all the way to a kind of peer-to-peer option. And so I think that professionally managed segment of the market is the fastest growing segment that we're going to see coming out of the COVID pandemic in the recovery. And we've seen a little bit of that already in the summer, because as soon as people were able to travel again, they were doing staycations. And what were they choosing as their top priority? To stay in a vacation rental, often managed by professional companies. So I think that's already happening. And I think we're going to see much more of that as the pandemic eases and we start to see the recovery in 2021.
Amazing. Speaking of professionally managed, you've built this proprietary technology to standardize the on-the-ground operation. Can you just explain to all of us how you are using this technology to help other smaller property managers expand their operation?
Absolutely. So, I mean, as a property manager ourselves, what we realized is there are lots of different technologies out there. You need a channel manager, you need a property management software, you need field management software, you need pricing software. I mean, the list goes on. And the problem is, if you manage 20 properties or even 50 properties, having to go out and choose those technologies, integrate those technologies, know how to get the most out of those technologies, that's actually, you need a whole team of people just to do that. And actually, most of what these companies are good at is providing an amazing guest experience and at bringing on new homeowners and continuing to grow their portfolio of properties. So if they were able, without having to pay large monthly fees, but just pay on a success basis for all the bookings that are delivered for them, to get access to that whole suite of technology already integrated, and actually a service to go along with it. It isn't just, here's a technology, figure it all out yourself and, and make the most of it, like a lot of the technology companies are. It's actually a service. So we actually provide all the account management, all of the integration with all of the channels. So whether that's Booking.com, Airbnb, exclusive channels that we have, such as Marriott Homes and Villas or Expedia, for example. So we not only just provide the ability to upload your properties and then do all the work yourself, we actually take that off of your hands and we deliver bookings to those providers. Paid for, already vetted, already with the guests having filled in their pre-check-in forms and all the details. So we take that whole piece of work off of those providers so that they can focus on what they're good at and they can grow their businesses with a partner. So that's really what Hosperia is about. And it's really exciting, especially in these days where a lot of smaller companies are having to make tough decisions because they can't afford to keep as many people in their team when times are tough. And this is a way for them to actually grow their business. And hopefully that means growing still their team over time, but they don't need to do everything on their own and have all that expertise in-house when they often have quite a small team.
I love that one-stop tech solution for property managers who are best at what they do, which is hospitality. Can you tell us about what is the best profile of these property managers? How many properties do they usually have? Is there any particular region that you think is a sweet spot?
So in terms of size, it's typically between 5 and 50 to 70 properties. We can go up to 100. Okay. So, you know, it's a range, but it's people who tend to have small teams. There might be less than 10 people on their team. You know, in many cases, they may have been around for many years. They may be very strong in their local area, but they don't know how to access all of the channels that are out there nowadays. And even if they can get access, you know, maybe they've signed up to Airbnb or booking.com, but then they don't know how to manage all of those bookings in a cost-effective and streamlined way. So, you know, I think that's where we can really help. And I think it's both city operators who want to grow their portfolios quicker, as well as those traditional sort of holiday homes providers who've recognized the world's changing and maybe technology isn't their strength and they'd like to partner with someone who can help them with that.
Absolutely. And moving on to your role as the chair of the UK Short-Term Accommodation Association, Merilee, what is your personal ambition or aspiration? And then how can the sector address the challenges in assurances, duty of care, quality management, all of these words that we love so much?
I mean, look, the Short-Term Accommodation Association has been around for almost 5 years now. I think around the world, it's probably one of the strongest, if not the strongest association kind of at a national level. And what's great about it is we've got everything from global portals like Airbnb, Expedia, HomeAway, through to very small companies who are property managers, individual hosts. And it's great because we're able to represent the whole sector. And I think what we've also seen is through the crisis, having a voice with government, that they know about our industry, we're able to influence potential regulation, but also that we can be ahead of regulation by setting our own standards. So for example, on quality and you know, standards, we partnered with Quality and Tourism, who ran the Visit England scheme for more than 20 years. And actually what they've helped us to do is have that independent accreditation and a set of standards that people even outside of our industry can understand. The hotels can understand it, government can understand it, and consumers can understand it. You know, when you get a 4 or 5 stars on your home, people understand what that means. And when it's third-party accredited, it means it holds some real value and weight. It's not just you saying that it's great. It's actually inspected and calibrated based on other properties in the area. So I think that's actually really exciting. But if I think of the organization overall, my vision is to help the industry grow responsibly. So that doesn't mean growing at all costs. That means growing responsibly and doing the right things so that we are a respected industry and that we can grow without constraints being put on us, like regulation, because they say maybe we're not doing the right things. And I think that's really important because sustainable growth is different than speed of growth. And I think if we can get the sustainable growth of our sector, that means we're going to have an environment in which companies who are solid performers, who are growing quickly, have an environment they can succeed in. And I think one of the things that's been incredible through the crisis is that we, as an industry association, 30 companies came together during the crisis and launched NHS Homes. And we gave more than £20 million of free stays to NHS workers during the crisis. That did more to build our government relationships than probably anything else we've done over the last 5 years, because they could see that we're an industry with a conscience. Yes. And we're an industry that's trying to help in the moment of crisis. And as a result of that, we've actually now started to change views of our sector, and they've started to realize we aren't just peer-to-peer. You know, there are hotel groups like Accor, who owns One Fine Stay, or Marriott Homes and Villas, who've entered our sector. Yes. And actually our sector should be respected, and our sector should be recognized as a professional sector in the hospitality world. And so as a result of that, last Friday, we launched Trusted Stays. Mm-hmm. And Trusted Stays is now the portal for anyone who has a portfolio of properties in the UK to access government bookings. And as far as I'm aware, I don't know of anywhere else in the world where government is actually booking homes in our sector. And I think that's hopefully an industry first, and something that will be the first of many, because I think that shows that our sector is maturing. And what it means as well is that the association is not just doing government relations and helping set standards. We're also creating commercial opportunities for all the companies in our sector. And so, you know, I would encourage anyone out there, if you aren't a member of your association in your country, become a member. It's really important to speak as one voice. And it's really important to work together to break down some of these barriers and help the sector to grow.
Absolutely. Merilee, I'm so admiring everything that you do. It's so amazing that you do so much and yet still manage to find the time to do your triathlon. So with that, I'd like to conclude this short fireside chat with 3 informal questions about one thing we love in common, which is running. So what is your favorite running track?
So lately, especially over the last period, running on a track is one of the few things you can do also a little bit with other people. So my triathlon club, we've been going to a running track in Wandsworth. And it's lit up at night, so we can go after work and have a set. And we've been running a lot of 800s lately, which is pretty hard. But it's great after a long day at work to just go into the fresh air and get to run a bit. And also to see people, of course, because that's so important during these times.
Of course, no one can live without social life, honestly. So how many marathons or triathlons have you done?
I'm not actually sure. I mean, I do them, to be honest, more for just general health, for fun. I love being a part of the club. I've done 2 half Ironmans. Wow. So one in the US, in New Hampshire, called Timberman. And then one in France, actually, in Chantilly was my first one. And I think I set a target of doing it under 6 hours, and I just managed. And I was very lucky because there wasn't too much competition that time, and I managed to get 3rd place for my age group, which was a really big surprise for me because I'm not a specialist athlete or anything, but it just goes to show when you put your mind to it, you do your training, then it's actually something that you can also succeed at. But for me, it's about keeping sanity. And I think, having exercise is a way to almost meditate and, to come out of your day to day and be able to keep your strategic thinking and a clear mind is actually one of the most important things.
Absolutely. It's the me time, right?
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Merilee. That was actually my next question, your best performance done, but I think you've already covered that very nicely.
Thank you.
It's been such a wonderful time speaking to you, and thank you so much for this.
Thank you very much.